just explain a little bit about what music supervision is, because I think people think it's, like, oh, I'm watching the clip of this film and I think the vibe of like this band is going to fit here. And I know that might be part of it, but from my understanding, it's a lot more behind the scenes negotiating and legal stuff. And just to kind of give a rundown, because I want people to know, because I work with a lot of people that want to use music or any kind of media in their content. And I know there's a lot of, it's always changing too. I think that's why, especially when it comes to like social media stuff, but just give like just a quick outline. That way, when we're getting into this more and more, people have kind of like a framework of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And Mike, feel free to jump in wherever you'd like, but
it's really boring. It sounds amazing. It sounds rad. Like you're working on music and films.
I mean, I think the idea is that folks think of music supervisors that we put together playlists all day,
like 90s soundtracks.
List the music and put our favorite things in the film and whatever. And I think that to a small percentage, some of that is true. I think that for some folks, maybe a large percentage, but the music supervisor is essentially the head of the music department for the production. That's their job. So under that, there's all kinds of responsibilities that fall under that. And the music supervisor, interesting enough, out of the production, is one of the only jobs in production that is on in the conception of the project, pre-production, into production, is actively working on things, into post-production. And when everybody else is fully wrapped and basically on to the next project, the music supervisor is still working on things, right? It's like
really?
with most jobs, if you're an editor, like you'll come in and post and, you might be involved in ideating certain things creatively leading into post, but really you're there for post-production and then you sign off and leave. Maybe in production, you're the same, like if you're in the production phase, you're involved in that and then you're kind of on to the next project by the time it moves into post. But when it comes to us, like we're there from the very beginning. And, reading the script in the very beginning, spotting music moments, like flagging them, figuring out, starting to budget based on what's written into the script, starting to come up with ideas based on what we're reading of different scenes. If they're in a cafe, there needs to be music. We have to flag it and everything like that. And we start to develop the music budget, which is absolutely crucial. There might be on-screen performances, of which there's a lot of that in TV and film, and Mike can talk a lot to that because I feel like a lot of the projects that he's worked on recently has had a lot of on-screen performances, but that's where we're involved in the actual physical production, and we're
if there's a scene in the movie where like a band's playing or something, is that what you're referring to?
All that stuff is like, coordinating with talent, sometimes it's hiring coaches for them to make it look like they know how to play instruments, recording the song, getting the song recorded because they're not actually performing it on screen, right? We record it in the studio and then they mimic to it, right? Like on screen. We have to organize that session, bring in all the different musicians and vocalists for that, engineer, studio, like produce that with them essentially, like all that aspect. And then the whole be there on set to make sure that it's good, it's going well and everything, So that's like sort of the on-screen kind of stuff. And then once we move, and throughout this whole process, we're going back and forth with the director and with the production about different songs for different scenes and coming up with ideas and starting to put together playlists and stuff. And then once you move into post-production, that's where things really sort of ramp up, where you're really, in spotting sessions and you're A/Bing like different tracks, you're sending different options, editors are putting stuff in. They're like, hey, this song that we thought was going to work, it doesn't seem like it's working. What else can we get? We have to go back to the drawing board, pull more stuff. And then once we have sort of and during that whole process, we're also starting the clearance process on the songs as well. So we're reaching out to the labels and the publishers who represent the music, and we're starting the process of negotiating the rights, because at the end of the day, the entire picture and all the music in it needs to fit within the budget, and we need to be able to kind of put together all the puzzle pieces to make sure that the production's getting what it needs, and we're creating sort of a unique or fun sonic landscape for the film, and it all has to fit within budget, and the rights have to be cleared. So it's sort of like a big process of all throughout the production.
I always tell people it's like the job is like 30% creative and 70% project management. You know, like the things that people think of when they think of music supervisors, like John was saying, that's probably about 30% of the job. Sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little bit less, because it's just sort of based on the scope of needs. But you never really have the final say of like the songs or the creative that go into it. It's collaborative, and it's, you know, the director's movie or the showrunner's show, you know, and so at the end of the day, it's kind of their call, but you're there to like provide options, maybe ideas they didn't think of that, you know, that they like more than what they thought. But a lot of it is also chasing down stuff that they want, and there's different voices in the room for that. You know, the editor's got ideas, the director's got ideas, sometimes producers, and so you're sort of wrangling all of like the wants as well as bringing in options that can support that. It's like, look, you can't have the Rolling Stones, we don't have the budget for that. But what about these things, you know?
What about these things? Yeah. But when it comes to music, we've all been listening to music since we were children, right? So it's like every single person will have an opinion about the music. And it's really unlike any other sector of the production where it's like everybody can have a valid opinion, because we've all been listening to music at an expert level, like since we were children, right? So it's like there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to music. It doesn't really exist in a vacuum of our own taste, really, you know?
No, that makes total sense, and thank you for like that thorough explanation as well. It even helped me, and I know a little bit about it, get a clearer view.